Talk to Neil Oliver. Hello, Neil.
Hello, Michael. It's always good to see you every week. It gives me hope to know you're still
Well,
there.
I know. I'm still here. They haven't dragged. When you see the crook sort of pulling my head away to the side, you'll know that they finally got into the building. But listen, freedom is the only thing to talk about today, I think, Neil. You're a man that knows a thing or two about it. I dare say, and I've never asked you this question, but you've probably been to many countries where freedom is not taken for granted, where freedom is not something that people expect to have, and when you live in a country where you're not allowed to have freedom, you really probably treasure it much more than some of the people in this country who don't seem to care too much about it being taken away.
Yes, it's a couple of years ago now, but I filmed in China. I was in China for a month or so, and it was my first time. I'd never been anywhere near China before, right. And it was such an eye-opener, the extent to which people were tracked at every move that they made. It was all basically on a single app on everyone's mobile phone, and you couldn't buy a train ticket, get on a bus ticket. You couldn't do anything, but the app tracked what you were doing, so that hypothetically at any given moment, if the state wanted to know where a person was, they could see that they were on the train from here to there, and they had recently been to a shop and they had bought this kind of sandwich, that kind of drink, and it had cost them this much. And it was a real eye opener. Wow. The extent to which people had just accepted it.
And was that because everything they did was done through the app, and everywhere they went, they were kind of logged, as it were?
Yeah. Everything. Booking. You would say to we had fixers, and we would say, how about if we went for such and such food tonight, and they would do it all straight away on this app on their phone. They would pre-book, but it meant that the venue and indeed the state knew that where we were going where we were going that evening. And it was amazing as well. When you sat around a table in a restaurant, we didn't notice it the first couple of times, because the fixers would, at the end of the meal, we would, the fixers pay because it's just easier, because they can speak the language and so on. And we realised that, in fact, what was happening was that the fixers were just walking out with us at the same time. And there didn't seem to be any transaction actually taking place. And then the fixer said, no, the restaurant, in fact, the table, there was a code on the table, and it knew what we had ordered, and it had already deducted the fee from our fixer's mobile phone without her actually doing anything.
Wow!
And the surveillance was truly eye-opening. And we were dealing with a lot of the whole point of the documentary was really we were talking to Scottish people who were living and working in China,
right? And
we were talking to them about what it was like, in the emergent, thriving economy of China, and they had all. Well, there was no dodging it. They were all operating in the same way, and had just internalized, I suppose, the fact that everything they were doing, every transaction, everywhere they went, every meal they had was all logged.
Yeah,
and anyone that was presumably had that kind of clearance could check up on them if they wished.
Yes,
and it was. So that would be the most obvious.
But I suppose
the
thing about that is fascinating to hear how that works, and it's actually not that far from what we do in terms of if somebody. The difference, I suppose, is nobody's perhaps following everybody around and watching what it is that you're spending your money on. But an awful lot of people now use their phones to buy everything. They've got Apple Pay or whatever it is, and they're buying all the things that they buy at the shops, so everybody knows where that's all going. But I guess if you're in a place like China and you're working and you're visiting, it's not the same as when it's happening to you in your own home.
No, it was, as recently as I say, as a couple of years ago, it was just an eye-opening novelty. And we were a British crew, and we were just sort of gossiping about it every evening about how isn't that amazing that this is how it works here. And never for a moment did I think, but yes, the fact is, I suppose, because we increasingly work in these cashless times, and everyone does everything with a card, and your passport with the biometric information on it as you come back in and out of the country and go into other countries, you're not really paying attention to what's being logged and what movements are there. And I suppose you're always assuming that it's a benign government that's in charge of this information, but of course, at any point, if you cross a line into a less than benign government, then you're potentially then it's a whole new ball game. And this nudging for the whatever they call it, the vaccine passport, is a sinister thing, because it's I dare say at the moment they might back off around pubs and restaurants or whatever, but at the same time there will probably be certification of some sort needed to attend a big event, and then there'll be something.
But I don't really see why that has to be the case, because as much as you could say that will make everybody feel safer. I mean, that's partly a result of the indoctrination that we've all been suffering from for a year, because actually there's no reason to say that just because somebody's had a COVID vaccine or a negative test that you're any safer than if they haven't. Because there's nothing to prove that the person who's negative isn't actually negative. The person might be positive, but they might not have any symptoms, or they might not have shown up as a positive. There's any number of things that they could also be. As I said yesterday, you could be in a pub thinking, oh, it's great because everybody's COVID safe. But unfortunately, the guy next to me has just come out of prison for hitting somebody over the head with an iron bar. And there's no proof that he's not going to do that to me.
Yes, that's the gaps in it, the inconsistencies within it, and the potential for it to become just a colander, through which anything could come and go, really, because the only preoccupation for 12 months has been COVID-19, and that, as though that's the only thing that's out there. My feeling about it all is really it's broader than that, and I suppose much more personal. Even when we were out and about in the last year, the Eat Out to Help Out and all of that, and we pitched back into restaurants and stuff and sat in beer gardens and whatever. But my feeling was, because the waiting staff were masked and everyone was, every move anyone made was followed by somebody with a bottle of bleach and a cloth. And if you wanted to go to the loo inside, you had to put a mask on. So now I just didn't like it. No. And if the future is one in which hospitality venues are open, but you have to operate like that with masks and social distancing, I just won't go. And it's got nothing to do with the virus. I've never been any more worried about COVID-19 than I would be about seasonal flu. I've just regarded it as being a risk on a similar level. But I just won't go to places. I can't stand the thought of being in a cinema, for example, where everyone around me is masked.
No.
Or going to a comedy club or a theatre, going to a big show and everyone masked and all of that. I'll vote with my feet and my wallet, and I just won't go. I can sit at home and drink a bottle of wine, or I can I'll invest in a big screen TV so that I can watch movies on a big screen rather than go to the cinema. That's just the way I'll operate, because for me, going out, I go out for a meal and to drink a bottle of wine with friends because of everything else. And if the whole thing for me is polluted by the idea of everyone being masked and with these plastic visors on, that ruins the experience for me.
Yeah.
Just full stop. And
yes, I get that.
I'll find myself withdrawing.
Yeah, no, I get that. But would you then, on the other hand, say, okay, well, if you want to have the experience as it was, which means that the waiters and the waitresses are all unmasked, they're walking around as normal, but you have to prove to them that you've had a coronavirus vaccine or that you're in some way negative, but you can then go and have that experience, would you then do that?
No.
I wouldn't either.
No.
See, I don't think it's a binary choice. I don't see why we have to make that choice.
No, I agree, but I wouldn't operate in a world of passport. I've over the years, I've been wanting to go to countries, and I've needed to take certain vaccines in order to be allowed to go, and I have carried vaccine passports around with me in my pocket to go to certain places, and I could see that in the future, but not to operate in my own country.
No.
I won't do that.
No.
I absolutely categorically refuse to get involved in that kind of operation. I just won't do that.
My sense is that the government and Boris Johnson know that they can't really make this work terribly well. If they were to make it work in one small area, it would be kind of piecemeal. The fact that they're picking out, say, the Crucible in Sheffield, I mean, as I said to somebody during the week, it's bad enough watching snooker without having to sit there with a mask on and prove that you haven't had a disease before you go in. To go to a concert, as you say, they haven't actually said what it would be like inside the said concert if you are all supposedly COVID safe. They haven't said that will require you then to remove your mask. It's all very piecemeal to me, it seems. They haven't really put any thought into it. They haven't really worked out how you're going to prove to whoever it is that you're showing your COVID certificate to that it's genuine. I mean, there are so many pitfalls. I just think it's going to be another one of these government suggestions that ends up being forgotten about and being kind of, just shoved under the rug some point down the road.
Well, you don't want it forgotten about. You want it stamped on.
Yeah.
You want it declared openly that this is not going to happen, because if there is a situation, as I said before, where they maybe say, right, not pubs and restaurants, but big, like whatever, a big venue.
Yeah.
If they get a finger in the door,
for example. I mean, why football?
Whatever. But if there's a finger in the door where people begin to accept that there are passports for certain things, then once there's a finger in the door, then it's easier to get a foot in the door, and then it's an elbow in the door.
Yeah.
And it means that your relationship with the government becomes akin to some kind of abusive relationship, where you're having to keep an eye out on what they're going to try and get away with next.
Yeah.
That's not a healthy state of affairs. A government is supposed to exist in our world to preserve our freedoms and to enable us to go about our business unmolested.
Yeah.
And if instead the government becomes the body that you've got to watch for fear that if you take your eye off them for a minute, they're going to pull a fast one.
Yeah.
That's a very unhealthy state of affairs, and as I say, the broader concern for me is the way in which so many people, and I'm not one of them, but so many people have obviously absorbed the idea that our fellow human beings are dirty, they're disease vectors.
Yes.
And if it's COVID-19 this week, in the years ahead, it could be, and surely will be, there will be other viruses and other things to worry about. And if we get the idea that our fellow men and women and children are just petri dishes swimming with contagion, and that we have to distance, wash hands, wear masks, keep away, don't go indoors, keep the windows open, then that has a corrosive effect on every aspect of your relationship with your fellow human beings and with society as a whole. Our relationships as a species will be compromised and altered 100%. And if that, hypothetically, if that went ahead, the government would have to face up to the idea that there might have to be a completely different social contract.
Right.
We all pay our taxes to have a certain society maintained and made open to us. The analogy I would make is, if you had a restaurant that previously had a standing charge, and for that charge you were able to partake of a 7-course meal, and you paid that standing charge. If from one day to the next they say that it's still the same money, but you can only have cheese and biscuits, you just wouldn't accept that you had to pay the same amount to get such a diminished and lesser offering. And if we go into some kind of future where society is lessened, our relationships with one another are diminished, we can't really rely on sending our kids to school freely and without masks. We can't really, go to the gym, go to the swimming pool, go to other council-funded facilities. The NHS becomes something that is solely preoccupied with whatever virus is the one deemed the most scary that week, and you can't get normal treatment. To what extent would it be justified for the government to maintain the system of charging for what we've had in the past?
Right. Well, this is the thing. I mean, we've almost fallen into this trap as well, whereby people are going, what am I allowed to do now? What can I do tomorrow? What will I be able to do next week? We pay these people. They work for us. People seem to have forgotten that. Boris Johnson works for me. I don't work for him. Matt Hancock works for me. Nicola Sturgeon works for you. These people are paid by us to do a job. They don't have any money. All the money they have is our money. And when they spend it, it's our permission that we give them to spend it. And so I think we need to get that back. I think we need to forget about this kind of compliance and this kind of simpering kind of surrender to anything that they want us to do. I say we start saying, get stuffed.
Absolutely. You and me, I'm private sector. I mean, whatever I do, what I do, and I earn the sort of money that the Treasury then taxes that pays for the public sector, as do you. And I always figure that we're on the profit side of the balance sheet for the country. The politicians are overhead. We're profit and they are overhead.
Yes.
And if, hypothetically, you might have to get into a situation where your relationship with society is a bit like your mobile phone. You can either have a contract or you can pay as you go.
Yeah.
For some people, it just wouldn't be worth having the contract. because the offering would be so limited in terms of the education available to your children at university. Why would you pay £9,000 in England and Wales, for your tuition with accommodation and everything else on top of it, when what you're actually getting in reality potentially is an online offering?
Right.
You just wouldn't. Why would you do that? And likewise, if you're being offered a diminished society, if everything out there is of a sort that you might not want to partake of it, then would the government really be justified in continuing to charge us for it? They're already saying that they need to increase taxes to try and recoup some of the money. Well, exactly what are we paying for? If all we're doing is paying their wages, and then building, is that all we get?
And building bigger and bigger empires of public advice from places like Sage, where they're coming out with things like this. I've got this right. How you like this one? £50,000 has been awarded to something called the Thriving Communities Project, so that the NHS can help people to do some paddle boarding. Now, it seems to me, first of all, that's slightly wrong-headed in as much as if you do paddleboarding, you might fall off the paddleboard, you might need some rescuing from an ambulance, which might have to be diverted from somebody who's got something really bad going on. I don't want to be told to go paddleboarding. I don't want to be told to walk more, to drink less, to eat the right food. That's none of their business at the end of the day. And for them to say to me, oh, yeah, but this is all about preventative medicine, well, you can get stuffed with that as well, because any number of things can happen to any number of people, no matter how fit and well they are. You don't save yourself any money on the NHS by being fitter, because you might get run over by a bus and you still need to go to hospital.
I've always been my tendencies are always towards smaller government rather than larger. And this year past, like nothing before, has filled me with the desire to say to politicians, get out of my face and get out of my life.
Yeah.
Get the country opened up, let people get back to work, let people get back to their lives. And would that tiny minority of elected representatives get back in their box and start doing what they're supposed to do, which is, cherish and protect our liberties and allow us to have a society, rather than why are they flattering themselves with the idea that they should be telling us what's right, what's the healthy way to be?
No.
I mean, for most of the last decades, the emphasis has been about the importance of mental health and the importance of exercise and how important it is to get out and about and see people. And, because this is how we have, healthy, well-balanced
reach
people.
Out to your neighbours.
And get your cancer screenings and check for bowel cancer, check for breast cancer, check for cervical cancer, because these are all the things that make us healthy people. And then like that, they just take all of that away. And then they have the temerity, they're already, yes, as you say, they're already suggesting that they might be the people to advise us about how to get well again. If you've spent the year being bullied at school, you don't then accept holding hands with the bully who's offered to walk you home so you feel safe from the bullies. It's
a very good point.
If your house has just been burgled and they've made a mess on the way out, you don't bring the burglar in to do the makeover and tidy up.
No.
You want other people to do all of that. And yet, having had a year where they've told us, just stay in your home, shut the doors, don't talk to anyone, don't go anywhere, for God's sake, don't touch anyone. And now, at a moment's notice, they have the temerity, the audacity to start suggesting that they should be giving us advice about our mental health and our general health. And the environmental lobby, I mean, where are these? I've tweeted about it this week. Where are these gazillions of plastic tests going to end up?
I know.
I walk the streets and the place is littered with masks.
Oh, I know.
Now it's going to be, where are all these, 2 tests a week for 67 million people? Where's all that plastic going to come from? And then where's it going to end up?
But this kind of middle-class daydreaming goes on all the time. I nearly kicked the TV in last night at the end of Channel 4 News. Jon Snow puts up a picture of the night sky and starts rambling on about how beautiful it looks because there's no light pollution, because there's not as many lights on as there were, and there's no planes in the sky, and the sky is much bluer. And I literally was shouting at the TV. I'm going, that's great. There's loads of people without any jobs. There's loads of people who can't go anywhere to see their family. People are dying because they haven't got any healthcare in parts of the world because nobody can get it to them. Well done, John. At least it looks nice up in the sky. What a complete plank.
Well, yes. I mean, trying to make a virtue, trying to make something photogenic and appealing out of they create a devastation and call it peace.
Right.
was the great speech, and thousands of years ago by the last Scot against the Romans. They create a devastation and call it peace. Well, this attempt to spin everything so that we should be grateful. I've speculated for a long time how long it was going to take them to segue from COVID into the environmental lobby. Having got everyone out of their cars because you can't go anywhere, and having got all of the planes out of the sky. And all, I thought, I wonder how quickly they'll say, let's lock down for the environment rather than lock down for COVID. But in the next breath, they say, right, here's billions of plastic tests that you can just use once and throw in the bin. Where's the environmental lobby when that starts to come off?
Well, as you might expect, they're all very hypocritical. But I'm glad to see that we're both still pretty angry about it, Neil. That's important. I think it's very important. We're going to stay angry until we fix this situation. And very good to talk to you as ever. We're out of time, unfortunately. Neil Oliver, archaeologist, TV presenter,